Alright, so in this part we're going to set up Hyper-V. And this is actually the point where we start building the foundation of our virtual lab. For this course, I am using a separate machine for the virtual lab. And honestly, that just makes life easier. My main workstation may be modern enough, but it only has 32 gigabytes of RAM. And it usually has way too many applications open already just to make this course possible for you. So rather than fighting for resources on my daily driver, I'd rather host the virtual lab on its own dedicated system. On that separate machine, I installed an evaluation copy of Windows Server 2022 with a desktop experience. And the reason is pretty simple. I want a clean operating system with a relatively small footprint, because this machine has one job: act as a virtualization host. I am not using it as a daily desktop, I am not turning it into a general purpose workstation, and I am not loading it up with all kinds of extra tools that I don't need. It is just there to run my virtual machines, and that's it. Now, before we're even gonna be touching Hyper-V, I did a few basic things on this machine. First, I gave it a static IP version 4 address of 10.0.0.91 with a 24-bit subnet mask, and I left IP version 6 on dynamic. And I'm only going to manage this server remotely over RDP. I want it running quietly in the background as a lab server, while I manage it from my normal system. What I also did is disabling the Microsoft Defender anti-malware protection, because it will definitely swallow up a portion of the available resources, and that would not be my choice on a sandbox lab machine. I also set up hostname resolution through my local hosts file, and that is just to keep my real home infrastructure untouched. I don't need to start editing DNS or changing things on my actual network just to support one sandbox server. This is a lab box, not a production machine, so I want the setup to stay isolated and simple. This machine is also multi-homed. It has 4 network adapters in total, 1 onboard Intel adapter and 3 consumer-grade Realtek PCI adapters which are not connected to the switch on my server rack right now. Now, I renamed those NIC properly to keep things readable, so I've got OMB, which stands for onboard, NIC1, NIC2 and NIC3. This may seem like a small thing, but trust me, it matters. Once you start building virtual switches and attaching networks, fake names like Ethernet 3 or Ethernet 5 become annoying very quickly. Clear naming makes your work cleaner, and it helps you avoid mistakes later. Now, if you're following along as my student, your setup may look different. If you don't own extra hardware besides the machine you're watching this video on right now, I totally get that. Except if you're watching this on a mobile device, of course. Chances are big you own a machine running Windows 11 Home Edition. Now, in that case, you're gonna need a little workaround to get Hyper-V installed, because it's a feature normally available only on professional Windows versions. You can find more about that in the description of this video. For this course, I'm focusing on the infrastructure side, not on every possible method of unlocking Hyper-V on every Windows edition. Let me first show you how to install Hyper-V on professional Windows client versions. You go to Start, go to Settings, then you click on System, scroll all the way down till you see Optional Features, click that. And then you click More Windows Features. Oh, it opens up on my other screen. There she is. Now you can see Hyper-V listed here. Make sure you select it and that the management tools and the Hyper-V platform are selected as well, and click OK. Alright, with that in place, let me RDP into my sandbox server so I can show you how to install Hyper-V when you're using Windows Server 2022 for this course. And we will do that through the server manager, which actually will open for us automatically by default. Now, just in case you don't know, you can actually disable that behavior. I personally don't want to open the server manager automatically on a sandbox server, so let's disable it. Let me show you how. You go to Manage, you click Server Manager Properties, and select this checkbox, Do not start Server Manager automatically at logon, and click OK. Alright, ready for action. So let's install Hyper-V. Go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. Click Next, Next. Our sandbox server is already selected. Next. Select Hyper-V, install the defaults, add features. Next, next, next. Now Hyper-V is asking us if we would like to reserve any network adapters. For now, we're not gonna select any. I would like to show you later how to do it yourself. So we're gonna click next for now. We're not gonna do anything with virtual machine migrations because this is a sandbox server. Click next. And now Hyper-V is asking us if we would like to change our default locations for virtual hard disks and virtual machine configuration files. Now we are gonna change this, but in a later stage, because I would like to show you the MMC snap-in for the Hyper-V manager. I want you to understand how it works and where you can find those settings. So we're gonna click next for now. And you can restart the server automatically if you want to. And click install. And welcome back. So we just installed Hyper-V on our sandbox server. You could find it right over here. Just click on Start, Windows, Administrative Tools, and there she is, Hyper-V Manager. Now let's make life a little easier for ourselves, shall we? Let's spin this to start, and let's spin it to the taskbar as well, and let's open this up. Alright, before we start creating virtual machines, let's just take a quick look at the Hyper-V Manager interface so you know where the most important things are. Now, this is the main MMC snap-in that we'll be using to manage the host and the virtual machines. And now, just in case you don't know what I'm talking about here, a snap-in is just a module for the Microsoft Management Console. You can actually open an empty management console just by running MMC here. Let me show you. MMC. And here you can add your own snap-ins, just in case you don't know. If you haven't seen this before yet, just play around with it. Anyhow, on the left side, you'll see your Hyper-V server. That is the host that we're gonna connect to. And once you select it, the middle pane shows the virtual machines running on that server. And below right here, you can see the checkpoint section. Now on the right side, you have the actions pane, and this is where most of the important management options will live. And actually, if you right click on your local server, you can find the same options right over here. So this is where you create a new virtual machine, import or export machines, open the virtual switch manager. You can open the Hyper-V settings for the host itself. So when you're looking for the most important tools, this is usually the first place to check. Now, one setting I always like to change early is the default storage location, like we talked before and what we skipped during the installation of Hyper-V. By default, Hyper-V wants to store virtual machines and virtual hard disks on the system drive. And technically that does work, but in practice it gets messy very quickly, especially if you have a separate hard disk available for your lab. So in order to change that, select the Hyper-V host and go to Hyper-V settings, and you will find virtual hard disks and virtual machines right over here. Let me go to the File Explorer. I will store my hard disks and VMs on the data disk for now. New, create a folder called Hyper-V. All right, and now we can select the correct directory where we want to store our stuff. Oh, creates these and virtual machines. Click apply, and that's done. Now, this just creates a cleaner setup for ourselves. It keeps the virtual machines off the system drive, makes storage easier to manage, and gives the host a much better structure from the beginning. This is one of those small steps that does not look very exciting, but it just helps a lot later. Once this is in its place, every new VM you create starts from a cleaner foundation. Now, when I'm going to run multiple machines, let's say more than two of the same base virtual machine, it will be a good idea in my case because, my system does not have SSDs to copy the base image over to another drive and create new virtual machines from there. All right, now let's create our first virtual switch. This is the piece that allows our virtual machines to connect out to our real network and in most cases, of course, reach the internet. So let's go to our virtual switch manager. And this is where Hyper-V lets us create and manage the different virtual network types in a graphical way. And for this first setup, we're going to create an external virtual switch. And the reason is simple. An external switch connects your virtual machines to a physical network adapter in the host. Now that means the VMs can communicate with the rest of your network and get internet access instead of just being isolated inside the host. So in the virtual switch manager, click external and create a virtual switch. And now we need to give our virtual switch a clear name. You might remember my machine has 4 different network cards. I am choosing to leave my onboard NIC alone and use my NIC 1 for this purpose. Let me call it external underscore NIC 1. I think that will be a great name. Next, we choose the physical network adapter. You need to select the NIC on your host that actually has internet connectivity. That might be an Ethernet adapter or it might be a Wi-Fi adapter, depending on how your machine is connected. In my case, I'll choose the adapter I already prepared for this purpose. Now, I'm really trying to be beginner friendly for this course. So just in case you don't know, you can actually check the status of your network adapters by using the PowerShell command get net adapter, and this will give you an overview of your network adapters and whether if they're disconnected or up. And you can use the command get net IP configuration in order to get the IP configuration status for all your network adapters. So let me select my applicable network adapter. It's this one for me. Now, you'll also see the option to allow the management operating system to share this network adapter. In most lab setups, you want to leave that enabled. That way, the host itself keeps network access through the same adapter while also allowing the virtual machines to use it. If you disable that by accident, you may cut off the host from the network, which is usually not what you want. Now, if your hardware supports it, you may also see the option Enable Single Root I/O Virtualization or SRIOV. We'll enable that here just to show it as a part of the setup. It's a more advanced performance-related feature, and while it won't matter for every lab, it's still good to know where it is and what it does. So let me enable that. And once this looks good, click Apply. Hyper-V will warn you that the network connection may be briefly interrupted while the switch is created. That is normal, so just confirm it. So now with that done, it is time to install Windows Server 2022 Data Center. Now, I already did download the ISO, it's right here on my own machine, but you can just Bing or Google it and it will pop up right on the top Windows Server 2022 Microsoft Evaluation Center. Just go right there and download the 64-bit ISO in English. Now let's create our first virtual machine. In the Hyper-V Manager, go to New, Virtual Machine, click Next, and specify a great name for this virtual machine. I already copy pasted my name. I'm gonna call it WS2K22-Data Center-GUI because it's just the most applicable name for this base image. Now click Next. Specify the generation, select generation 2, click Next. Assign this machine 4 gigabytes of RAM, click Next. And let's not connect this to a network just yet. We're gonna do that later. Click Next. When creating a new virtual hard disk, I'm just going with the defaults for now. So click Next. And we're gonna install the operating system from the ISO we just downloaded. In my case, it's on my C drive, right over here. Next and finish. Right, so the virtual machine has been generated. Let's go to its settings and let's tweak some things. Let's start at firmware. This is correct. The network adapter can go down because we're not gonna pixie boot. Security, secure boot is enabled, leave that. We're not gonna enable the trusted platform module. This is actually mandatory for Windows Server 2025, and that's the main reason we're using 2022 for this course. The memory, we're just gonna leave that for now, and we're gonna bump this up to 4 virtual processors just to speed things up. And at checkpoints, we're gonna select standard checkpoints and leave this one unchecked. No automatic checkpoints for now. And at automatic start action, we're gonna do nothing. So with that, click apply. Okay, and let's open her up. And let's start the machine. Press enter or any other key. And the installation is booting up. So that's actually going pretty fast. In my case, the time and currency format will be Dutch. Next, install now. So now we're getting a list of the editions that we can install, and we're going with data center evaluation with the desktop experience. And that's very important for this first virtual machine because we're gonna manage all the servers from this box. And we will install an evaluation copy of Windows 11 Enterprise later on in this course, but it's very important for a first Windows server to include a GUI. Click Next. Accept the license agreement. Custom. New. Apply. Yes, create the other partitions. And click Next, and the installation is starting. All right, welcome back. The installation has finished and it is asking us for a password for the local administrator account. So let's type in the super secure password that we're gonna use throughout this course. All right, so let's just simulate the Control-Alt-Delete here on the left top on your screen. All right, so as usual, the server manager is gonna open up for us automatically. We're not interested in the Windows Admin Center. Do not show this message again. We're just gonna click this away. We're not gonna use it. So what we're gonna do now is just give it one reboot. Makes no sense at all. It's just an habit. And welcome back. So now that we gave our machine one reboot, we're gonna give it access to the internet. So let's go to File, Settings, go to your network adapter and select your applicable virtual switch and click OK. Yes, we're gonna allow that. Click Run as config. And what we're gonna do now, first is enter in 5. We're gonna change that. We're only gonna do manual updates, at least for now. And we can change the telemetry settings if you want to. I'm choosing yes, and I'm gonna turn that off. And let's install updates. Let it search for all quality updates. And choose to select all applicable updates. This is gonna take a while. See you later. And when she's done, yes, we're gonna restart immediately. Do not forget to eject your ISO like that. Alright, welcome back. Now, before we continue, let's quickly talk about what a golden image actually is and what we are doing here. Now, a golden image is basically a clean master copy of an operating system that you prepare once so you can reuse it again and again. So instead of installing Windows from scratch every single time, clicking through the same setup, doing the same updates and changing the same basic settings over and over, you build one good reference machine first. And that machine becomes your template. So you install the operating system, apply updates, make your basic configuration changes, and get it into the exact state you want as starting point. Then once that is done, you generalize it using sysprep, shut it down and keep that disk as your clean base image. From that point on, every time you need a new server, you can create it from that image instead of starting from zero every single time. And that saves a huge amount of time. But it's not just about speed, it is also about consistency. Because when every new server starts from the same clean base, your environment becomes much more predictable. The settings are all the same, the patch level is the same from the start, and that makes everything easier to manage. Now we're also gonna disable the Microsoft Defender antivirus because it is just going to slow us down on our lab environment. So let's go to run gpedit.msc. And then you want to go to administrative templates, Windows components, Microsoft Defender, and click real-time protection, turn off real-time protection, and enable that. So with that done, we are totally ready to sysprep our machine. So let's go to the Explorer. Go to your C drive, Windows, System 32, and go into sysprep. And now keep this selected, enter out of box experience. Make sure this one is selected. We're gonna generalize this machine And we're gonna make sure the machine is gonna shut down and not reboot. And then we're gonna click OK. And there she goes. Alright, our first master image is done. The system has been sysprepped, it shut itself down, and that gives us a clean base image for a Windows Server with the full graphical interface. Now it's time to create one more master image, and this time we're using Server 2022 Data Center without the desktop experience. So this will be our server core image. The setup is almost the same as before, but there are a few small differences that I would like to point out. When we create this VM, we're gonna call it WS2K22-datacenter-core. And we'll build it as a Generation 2 machine again, give it 2 virtual processors and assign 2048 megabytes of RAM. And that gives us a clean baseline for a server core template in this lab. It is light, simple, and more than enough to get started. So let me just create this virtual machine real quick. And in the meanwhile, please enjoy some scary, stereotypical corporate music. Alright. And let's start the installation. See you on the other side. Now it's very useful to understand why we want both editions with both a graphical interface and server core. The GUI version is great for learning, management, and troubleshooting. It gives you a familiar place to work with Server Manager, MMC, snap-ins, and other graphical tools. And honestly, it's a good idea to keep at least one Windows server with a GUI in your environment. And that's not because every server needs one, but because having one GUI server gives you a practical management point when you do need it. It makes administration and troubleshooting a lot easier, especially when you want quick access to tools like DNS, DHCP, Active Directory, or certificate management. Server core is different here. It removes the graphical shell and keeps the operating system much leaner. That means a smaller footprint, less overhead, fewer components to patch, and a smaller attack surface. So from a security and maintenance point of view, server core is often the better choice for infrastructure roles. And while it may look more limited at first, that does not mean it is harder in a bad way. It just means you manage it differently. You can manage server core locally with tools like sconfig and PowerShell, but most of the time you will manage it remotely through Server Manager, Windows Admin Center, PowerShell remoting, RSAT, RSAT, or MMC tools from another machine. So really the goal is to use both where they make sense. Keep at least one GUI server for management and convenience, and use server core where you want a leaner and cleaner server build. Alright, at this point the server is basically ready. We already changed the time zone, disabled telemetry, and installed all updates. So there's really just one more thing that we want to do before sysprepping. Let's go to the PowerShell command line and run the following command: uninstall -windows feature space windows -defender. Press enter. So with that done, let's give the server one last reboot before sysprepping by restart computer. Alright, now with that done, just one quick note. The removal of the Microsoft Defender anti-malware service does not mean the firewall gets turned off as well. Microsoft Defender firewall is completely separate. So the firewall stays enabled, which is exactly what we want. And now we're ready to sysprep. And yes, even on server core, the old sysprep GUI is still there. You can actually even open it up. And the reason for that it still works, is because server core is not completely stripped of every graphical component. It does remove the full desktop experience, but Windows still keeps enough of the underlying Win32 GUI subsystem in place for small dialog-based tools like sysprep to run. So things like basic buttons, windows, dialog boxes can still appear, even though you do not have a full normal server desktop. Microsoft still ships that sysprep interface for compatibility, even though the UI is deprecated and the command line is the preferred method now. So for us, just let's keep it clean and just use the command parameters. Let's go to the command prompt and run sysprep from the terminal with the OOBE and generalize and shut down parameters. And that puts the machine back into out-of-box experience, removes machine-specific information, and shuts down. Alright, with that done, we now have two golden images for Windows Server 2022. One with the full GUI and one with server core. And that puts us in a really good place, because from this point on, we do not need to keep reinstalling Windows from scratch every time we want a new server. We already have two solid master images we can build from, depending on what kind of server we need. So now the foundation on the server side is ready, and that means it's time to move on to the next big piece of the infrastructure. We are going to set up our very first edge router and firewall using OpenSense. And this is where the network really starts coming to life. Because before we can build domain controllers, file servers, clients, site-to-site links, and all the rest, we first need a proper network edge. We need routing, we need a firewall control, we need a place where traffic can enter, leave, and be filtered properly. So that's exactly what we're going to build next. We'll start with OpenSense as the edge router and firewall for the environment. And from there we can begin building out the rest of the infrastructure step by step. And from this point on, the pace of the course is going to pick up a bit. We've done the groundwork, we've built the base, and now we can start moving faster because the real infrastructure work begins here. So with that said, I'll see you in part 4.